First story: has anyone ever had sleep paralysis before? I tell you, it's one of the strangest, most fascinating yet horrifying things that you could experience. It's the feeling of being unable to move. Upon awakening, your senses and awareness are intact, but you still feel as though you're in this half-asleep, half-awake state. I'd heard stories of this long before it happened to me. I've only experienced it once. I was in college. I was going through an incredibly tough time in my life. I was insanely stressed during finals week. I wasn't getting much sleep. It must have been the night before my last final. I went to bed late because I stayed up all night studying for bio. I don't remember at what point I decided to finally call it. I just remember it all becoming a blur, then blackness. Next thing I remember, I was in my room in my bed, but there was this weird haziness in my awareness, like I was awake, but I felt weaker when I tried to move. I couldn't. I could only move my eyes to look around the dark room. At one point, when I guessed I was looking to one side of the room, I looked back to the center, and there was this woman standing dead center in the room facing the bed. She was wearing this black dress and holding some long objects. I wanted to call out Mom, but my paralysis prevented it. I couldn't say anything. The woman came closer to me until she knelt down and touched my forehead, and I could feel it. She got eye to eye with me, and I could see my mother's face. I tried to say Mom again desperately, but I was stuck in my own body. She stood back up and walked to the doorway before disappearing into the house. I lay there unable to move. Maybe another 10 to 20 seconds before my vision suddenly became more clear. My mom passed away 3 weeks prior to this story too, and I was able to sit up and think more clearly. I jumped out of bed and ran to the bedroom hallway, screaming her name repeatedly. A door opened down the hall, and someone came to embrace me, but it wasn't my mom. It was my dad, who told me he missed her too. I adore dreams because they can be so ethereal and strange that you feel as though you're in a different reality where nothing makes sense. But what if that unearthiness carries over into the actual world? You'll see what I mean in a moment. I had a strange nightmare while I was in REM sleep about being pursued by an odd creature in the midst of the forest. The dream became hazy though, and I sort of woke up from it because as I was getting out of it and back in bed, I was unable to move a muscle in my body. I then heard a faint, strange noise that was an inexplicable, robotic yet alive type sound. It began softly and repeated every 3 seconds, and each time I felt like the sound was getting closer. It became so unbearably loud in my head that I wanted to scream but was unable to do so. My eyes locked on the closet door, specifically the crack that I never leave open, and every time I heard the noise, it seemed like the closet and the man's distorted face were getting closer until the closet door slammed shut and everything went silent. Shortly after that, I regained control of my body, and the first thing I did, despite the fact that I was 24 years old, was run to my parents' room to get my dad to check the closet with me. Nothing was in the closet or the rest of my room, but my dad seemed fairly certain that what I had just experienced was sleep paralysis, and that he had also experienced it once. This didn't make me any less disturbed about what I had just gone through though. Story 3: many years ago I had a sleep paralysis experience. I knew there was a thing in my closet, something really evil, but I also knew I was dreaming and I should face my fear. I tried not to look directly at the closet door, but if I moved my eyes my head would turn away. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't look directly at it. Then I woke up in a cold sweat. At first I felt really relieved that it was over, but very shortly I realized it wasn't a dream and there was really something in the closet. I was laying on my back and couldn't move. I didn't really hear it, but I could kind of feel the sickening laughter wash over me in waves emanating from the closet. All of a sudden the thing throws a human head at me and it lands on my chest face up. It was this girl I knew in high school. Up to this point I was kind of holding it together, terrified but not panicked. Well, I lose it now. I can't even scream. All I could do is make these grunting sounds and moaning noises. I'm wriggling and straining, trying to rock from side to side to get it off me, but I can't move. This seemed to last maybe another minute or two, and then I really woke up. It was so traumatic that for weeks I would be scared when I woke up that I wasn't actually awake and something horrible could happen at any second. It still makes my skin crawl when I think about that laugh. The thing is, I never heard of sleep paralysis or night terrors at that point in my life story, for I thought I was losing my mind. I've suffered sleep paralysis a total of 3 times in my life. The first 2 times it just consisted of me waking up not being able to move my body. The third time was much different though. I had woken up very early morning, probably like between 5 and 6 am, when the sun was just starting to come up. There was light in the room but barely any. I tried to move, but I had that unfortunately familiar feeling of paralysis, helplessness. I couldn't do anything but stare at the wall when I heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs of my bedroom. It was my brother, my sister, my dad, and my mother. They were all crying uncontrollably and appeared to be at least a foot taller than me. It was unsettling as the four of them approached my bed and stopped at the bedside, towering over me. All four of them crying. I couldn't move. I wanted to cry for help or just yell at them to stop because they were scaring me. Their heights, they looked like they were near to hitting the ceiling. Then just as quickly as they entered, all four of them turned and walked back down the stairs. I could move again, and so I ran down the stairs to follow them, but they weren't in the outside area. I went to each of their rooms one at a time. All four of them were fast asleep. My heart was racing because the most surreal, unnerving thing just happened to me. I had to lean on the wall to gather my thoughts for a second. Breathing heavily, falling back asleep was futile. The rest of the night I lay awake until the sun was fully up. A few days later I was struck by a speeding car when crossing the road with friends and ended up with 3 broken bones and a fractured thigh bone. I was hospitalized for a week, and at one point all 4 of my family members stood next to my hospital bed looking down at me, my mom being emotional and crying. It was almost the same image from my sleep paralysis. I'm not superstitious at all, but if I were, I would 100 believe that dream was some kind of sign or some kind of prediction of the future. In fact, I just got chills writing that last sentence thinking about it. Narrative 5. At some point over the summer of 2016, I went out late drinking with some buddies. We were kinda just walking around town and then around the neighborhood when one of my friends spotted someone hiding in a bush. He pointed and said, "Look," and we all walked a little closer to get a better look. We could see what he was talking about, but just barely. It was bizarre, like someone hiding in this bush in front of this house. When we got too close, apparently this weird off-putting sound started coming from the bush, so we all screamed and laughed and ran away. We screamed because it was scary, but left because at the same time it was bizarrely funny, and there were a lot of us. So anyway, we walked back to our houses respectively, assuming whoever was in that bush was just messing with people. I fell asleep pretty easily that night since I was drunk, but next thing I remember was waking up to the near pitch blackness of my room. I couldn't look at the clock to see what time it was because I literally couldn't move. I was in a sleep paralysis state. I looked around the room with my eyes only and started to hear a familiar noise, the noise we heard coming from that bush. Then I looked straight in front of me at the foot of my bed, and what I saw was pure nightmare fuel. It was what appeared to be this floating, grotesque, horrific head of a demonic ghost-like thing. As it got closer to me, I realized it wasn't floating. There was a body, but its body blended in with the blackness of the room. Its mouth hung open, and it just kept making the familiar noise from the bush. It got mere inches from my face before it suddenly just faded away. I was able to let out a scream and move my body. I sat in my bed panting and heart racing. I flicked on the lamp and checked around my bed, but that demonic thing was gone. What I just experienced seemed so real, like I was awake for it. It wasn't a dream. I told my parents about it the next day, and they agreed with me that it was sleep paralysis, though they had never heard of anyone seeing freaky like that before.